Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome back to Thursday Talks. I'm Jillian Ladano. For those of you who don't know me, thank you guys for tuning in. We have a really special guest on tonight with a topic that is an interesting topic because it's something we all need to think about, especially in these uncertain times we've been in now. So I always like to bring guests on for the viewers that you can get something out of this, learn something from it, and leave knowing a little more than you did before you started. So I'm hoping that that's the case tonight. So I'm bringing on a friend of mine who is an estate planning attorney. Her name is LTalty, and we're going to talk about some things we all need to know. So let's bring her on. Hey, Lauren, how are you?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on tonight. I'm so excited to see you.
Me too. I'm excited to do this.
So I was just doing your introduction. I was talking about how some of the things with estate planning, a lot of people don't like to always talk about because it's like, oh, that feels funny, or I don't want to talk about, what could happen. It's just a weird topic, right? But
Mhm.
I felt like in these uncertain times that we're living in, this is a perfect time to talk about the things that you do as an estate planning attorney to protect ourselves and protect our children, our families, and our homes and our assets and all of the things. So I thought you'd be a perfect guest to have on tonight for our viewers.
Yes, this pandemic it lets us realize that life is unpredictable, and one of the best ways to handle that is to be prepared.
Yes,
So, starting with having this conversation, will really help people.
I totally agree. And I can't agree more. And it was brought to my attention back when my children were younger, and I realized I didn't have what I needed. So I thought maybe somebody watching tonight or somebody watching in replay might say, oh, goodness, I don't have what I need, and let me go out and check it out. So so we're going to be talking about some topics tonight that, like I said, aren't always, the first things that you want to talk about, but they're necessary and important. So one of the first questions I want to ask you, for our viewers especially, is why do people need a will, and what happens if you pass away without one?
Sure. So, first, a will is a legal document that coordinates the distribution of your assets after passing away.
Mhm.
Writing a will is one of the most important things you can do for your family and loved ones.
Yeah.
It allows you to communicate your wishes to them.
Mhm.
Um, it allows you to be in control of who inherits your assets and how they're distributed.
Mhm.
It also lets you designate who winds up your affairs for you.
Yeah.
Um, and having a will can reduce the chances of conflict among family members
Yeah.
and also additional cost.
Yeah.
Uh, it'll cut down on that. So if you don't have a will at the time of your passing, the law and the courts will make the decision about how your assets are distributed and who gets to inherit. Um, and also, if you don't have a will, you also have to have an administrator appointed to wind up your affairs.
Mhm.
Um, and in that case, preference is given to your immediate family.
Mhm.
Um, but if there's no family, let's say, then the court and the surrogate will appoint a attorney
Mhm.
to do the job, and that's going to be someone that you don't know and that doesn't know you, and
Yeah.
they're not going to know how you wanted your estate to be administered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having the will allows you to take that control.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to say before we even get started was a little bit of a disclaimer, we are talking about, because yes, these are legal issues we're talking about, but hearing this tonight is not creating a client-attorney contract in any way. This is legal information, but if you're going to go forward with any of this, you should consult an attorney. This is more for informative reasons and to plant a seed, to kind of, point you in the right direction of what you might need to ask, that kind of thing. So just want to put that out there. I should have said that when we started, but and sorry we're late tonight, guys. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty. The computers get a little crazy sometimes. So thank you guys for hanging around. So you're right. the will is a way to communicate what you want, because we all have specific things we want put in place, but once we're not here, how do we make sure that happens? A will would be the way to do that.
Right.
So what are the main components of a will?
Um,
And yeah, go ahead.
Good. Sorry. Oh, I
No,
was just gonna say, so in the will, you designate the executor, which is the person that's going to carry out the provisions of your will. You can also identify a backup. It's very important in your will to designate not only a primary person, but also someone else in the event they're not able to do the job you've asked them to do. And also, uh, it's important for you to have conversations with people if you want them to serve in that role, to let them know, because you don't want to put someone down that maybe doesn't want to do the job, and then you're sort of in a difficult position.
Yeah.
Also, in the will, you can provide specific gifts for family members or loved ones. You identify who you want to inherit, and again, any backup beneficiaries should the first person no longer be living upon your passing. And actually, on the other hand, you can put in a provision if you don't want somebody to inherit. If you maybe there's someone who you provided for and you don't want them to inherit, you can put a provision like that in your will.
Interesting.
Yeah. And a will should contain the powers and the authority that you're granting your executor to wind up your affairs, and any specific directions you have for them in doing so. Another big thing for a lot of young people is if they have children that are minors, you can appoint a guardian. And again, you would want to appoint a backup guardian as well. Likewise, if you have children that you want to provide for in a trust, you can have trust provisions in your will. And that would be for children, and if somebody were to have grandchildren. And also, if you were going to have a trust in there, you would want to appoint a trustee and a backup trustee.
Wow.
Another thing as well that can be in a will is you can appoint a funeral agent, which would be the person that handles your funeral. This can be important if you have specific beliefs and wishes for your funeral and want to ensure that those are followed. This can reduce conflict between family members as to who gets to make the arrangements. For example, if you have two children and one says, nope, she wanted to be cremated, and the other one says, nope, she wanted to be buried, in that case, you would want to have a funeral agent to make sure that your wishes are followed and to reduce that conflict between siblings.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, I have a will, but I don't know if I have a funeral agent in mind. I'm going to have to go back and take some looks at it.
So sometimes people will select that their executor gets to handle their funeral. So there may be a provision in your will that says the executor has the authority and power to make the funeral arrangements.
And it's interesting what you say too about avoiding conflict. A lot of times people don't realize how crazy things can get when there are no wills. I had mentioned to you too how I've heard of celebrities, famous, really rich celebrities that don't have wills, which is mind-boggling in so many ways. And their families are flipped upside down after their passing, which, I mean, if anyone watching has never had a very close loved one pass away, it's a very tumultuous time. And the last thing you want to do is, go through this kind of stuff of who gets what and who does what. You really don't want to do that. So it's interesting how many people don't have these in play. And the thing with the children, that was a big one for me, because when I first did my will, my kids were small, and I was told, you have to pick somebody who, God forbid, you and your husband pass away. Who's going to take your kids? And I'm going, oh my God, I don't know. And I had to come to that moment. And then I also had to contact the person and say, hey, are you willing to take on this role? Because, like you said, you can't you have to tell the person. You can't just put somebody's name down and surprise they get,
Right.
kids at the end of the day. So there's so much to think about. And again, with this uncertainty of what's going on in our world, it's not like years ago where young people usually were okay. We're young, we're healthy, we're good. Nowadays, with a pandemic, you could be any age and maybe you won't be. So who knows? It's just, I thought this was an important topic to talk about because it might start some conversations for people and families that could really avoid some of this conflict, some of this craziness at a time where you don't want to be dealing with this kind of stuff. But another thing that you and I had talked about, I was mentioning to you, which leads me to my next question about living wills and medical directives. There was a very publicized couple a while ago where the woman was in a vegetative state and the husband decided he wanted to pull the plug just because there was no coming back. And because he wasn't appointed, whatever it was, he wasn't allowed to do that.
Hmm.
And it created a huge controversy in the media. I remember this thinking, "Oh my goodness, who would have ever
Hmm.
thought?" So can you tell us a little bit more
Sure.
about that?
So I think you're talking about probably a medical directive and living will. And that's the legal document where you let your family and healthcare providers know your wishes for your end of life care when
Yeah.
you're unable to make those decisions, whether you're unconscious or whatnot. And it allows you to appoint a person to be your healthcare power of attorney
Mhm.
to make those decisions for you. And
Yeah.
again, it's very important to put a backup as well. Um, and one question I get a lot about is, can I have two people? I have two children. I want them to both make the decision. And the answer is yes.
Wow.
The main thing is that they need to work together.
Yeah.
So again, you can't have a situation where one's saying, mom wanted this, and the other one saying, no, mom wanted that.
Mhm.
Um, and some of the powers that are granted in that living will and medical directive are the right to consent or refuse medical treatment, employ or discharge medical providers, and
Mhm.
also access your medical records.
Wow. Okay. So that sounds like a pretty important thing then that you need to have.
Sure,
Again,
especially in this time,
yeah.
we don't know with how fast things can decline with the pandemic and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Also, for your viewers that are in a relationship but
Mhm.
don't have a legal title like spouse,
Yeah.
and if you want that person to be making those decisions for you,
Mhm.
it's really important for you to have
Yeah.
that in writing with the appropriate signing requirements so that they're able to access your medical records.
Mhm.
Um, and you don't want to have a conflict with a significant other and immediate family as to who gets to make those decisions. Again, it's important to get that on writing.
That's a really good point because there are a lot of people that maybe aren't married and they just, but that is their person. And
Mhm.
but when it comes down to it legally, it's not.
Right, right. I mean,
Well,
and it's in all aspects. If that's their person,
yeah.
uh, boyfriends and girlfriends aren't, recognized if you die without a will. Uh, Parents, siblings,
Mhm.
children, those are identifiable groups. So again, if you have a significant other that you're not married, but you want them to have your assets, it's important to put that in writing in a will.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you just said about assets. When I was creating my will, they had said to me, if you didn't have things in certain trusts and certain, the way I mean, I'm probably botching it, but I think it was trust. They gave me a scenario where if I passed away and my husband did not, and then he got remarried, if the way things were, the person he remarried could end up with all of my assets if it wasn't put in the right. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like, you're creating a will, you think you're covered, but you really have to have someone very knowledgeable that knows what they're talking about and protects everything in a certain way.
Absolutely. You have to, although we want these documents to last a long time,
Yeah.
you do have to think about different scenarios, like passing away and being remarried. one thing we do recommend, even if someone were to have their estate plans done, is that they should be reviewed periodically. You want to make sure they're up to date with all of your major life events, your marriage, death, divorce, having a child. So yes, definitely.
How often would you say is typical for them to be reviewed, or is it just dependent on your lifestyle?
Um, Typically 3 to 5 years.
Oh, okay.
But if you know you've had a major life experience,
Yeah.
you should get those reviewed more frequently than that.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know because I don't think mine's been reviewed in a long time. So I might have
Mhm.
to give you a call after this, after this. That leads me to my next question too, talking about modifying provisions of a will. If somebody already has a will, are they able to modify what's in the will? And how does that work?
So yes, I mean the general answer yes, and that would typically be well, it could be in a codicil,
Mhm.
and that's an amendment essentially to your will. Um, However, they're being used less and less.
Mhm.
If you have a provision that you want to change,
Yeah.
more and more attorneys are actually recommending that you just get a new will.
Oh,
Uh, you don't, it reduces the risk that, well, it's helpful because everything's in one document. You're not
yeah.
looking at multiple documents. The other risk that it reduces is that those changes are omitted, whether intentionally.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody sees the codicil and sees they're no longer inheriting as much as they thought, and they mistakenly don't have it,
Oh,
or or it's a mistake.
yeah.
Especially if they're not together and that document's not found.
Mhm.
So if you do, our recommendation is that if you do want to make a change, that you should put that in a new will.
Wow, that's interesting. I would have never even thought of that if it was an amendment like that. Like you said, it's not even in the original document and that could be misplaced or it could be
Sure.
omitted. Wow, that's food for thought right there.
Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I never would have thought of that, but again, if you're not here to represent yourself and this is what's representing you, you want it to be as comprehensive as possible, I would assume, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So I'm sure a lot of people wonder, because I know I wondered before I started all of this. I know prices vary and I know it's across the board. It could be all over the place, but what is a typical average price range-ish for a typical run-of-the-mill will? Not that super complicated, just a family that might have kids in the house. What would something like that typically average?
Well, I'll start lower.
Yeah,
So if it's just a single person, they're just getting a will,
yeah.
and maybe there's not children, then it can be as low as $500.
Okay.
I would say adult children. It
Yeah.
can be starting point could be about $500.
Mhm.
Uh, when you add in minor children, where you're doing trusts and that kind of thing,
Mhm.
the prices would go up. And if there's more complex estate plans, it can go higher than that. Obviously, I would say, about 1,500.
Mhm. Okay. It's just interesting because I feel like that's one of the biggest roadblocks for people because for one, they don't really know what to even, what this entails sometimes. And a lot of people have no idea what something like this costs. And when we
Mhm.
don't know, we kind of assume, and you know what they say when we assume. So there might be some people that are assuming it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to get a will. So they just keep pushing it aside. But to hear something like this, like chances are it may be less than what you think. It may
Right.
not be as bad as you think. It might be worth looking into after hearing all of these things. I know before I got my will, I had no idea what a will would cost. I'd never got one before. So
Mhm.
I just assumed they were super expensive. It's this big legal document and with lawyers and the whole bit. And I was surprised. It wasn't as expensive as I thought.
Mhm.
And, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not usually cheap, but it wasn't anything that was breaking the bank.
Sure.
So once people realize that, I mean, especially with the way we are all such big consumers nowadays, something like this, even if it was $1,000, $1,500, whatever, I mean, I know people that spend way more than that on their electronics in their home or the vacations they take, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing too is you're hopefully saving additional costs and expenses to your loved ones after
Mhm.
you passed away. If you pass away without a will, there's additional costs, and if there's a conflict, among family, who gets to do what and who is going to inherit, that gets even costlier.
Yeah.
So it's sort of putting a little time and a little money up front
Mhm.
to avoid that conflict and those costs in the end.
And what type of costs are you referring to? Is it more like a probate kind of thing or what type of?
Sure. So if two siblings both go to the court and say, mom died without a will and I want to be the administrator, and the other one says, no, I want to be the administrator, there's costs with that. And essentially that turns into estate litigation of who gets to do the job. So now you're essentially paying attorney fees
Mhm.
to decide who gets to be the administrator.
Okay, I get it now. That's interesting. I never, again, it never crossed my mind, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this
Mhm.
might not have crossed their mind either. So this is just a way to guarantee that everything is smooth sailing and, everything's taken care of.
I can't say smooth sailing, but yes, it takes
Smoother.
it's smoother, exactly, and definitely reduces um, some of that conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can't say it eliminates it.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Reducing it is good. I mean, again,
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody watching has ever lost a really close loved one, but it's a bit of a process. I mean, it's very expensive when somebody passes away, funeral costs, all of the things.
Mhm.
There's a lot to think about, and it's a lot. I'm not gonna lie. My mother passed away. Oh my God, it's almost been 14 years this month. It's unbelievable. But when it
I'm so sorry.
happened, thank you. It was a shocker. And I had an insurance agent on not that long ago. We were talking about life insurance.
Mhm.
And I mean, I speak candidly. Everybody that knows me knows everything about me, so it's okay to say, but my mother really didn't have much. And when she passed away, her little tiny life insurance policy she had, which I'm surprised she even had any, was only $5,000. Now, again, don't know if you ever had to, have a funeral for anybody, but that is not even a shot in the bucket. I mean, it's very, very, very expensive. So when somebody passes away, there's so much uncertainty around that anyway, that this is such a nice way to kind of avoid a lot of that. And like you said before with children, I mean, even if you don't have any assets, even if you're like watching this going, I don't even have anything. What do I need a will for? If you have kids and you pass away, what's going to happen to your kids right from the jump? If you have someone appointed, it's a smoother transition, at least in a very rough time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of requirements go into like signing a will, getting a will? I know we're in COVID right now, so a lot of people aren't meeting in person. When I did my will, I had to meet in person. Are you still able to do how are you able to do this during COVID?
Okay, so for the requirements, a will should be signed in front of a notary and two disinterested witnesses,
Okay.
and you should let your executor know where your original will is and how they can get it. And
Okay.
also, you should only have one original will. You don't want to have multiple originals because that would be a conflict.
Okay.
Um, that would have to be dealt with. But yes, as I said in the beginning, the pandemic is really a daily reminder of how unpredictable things are. And in these uncertain times, it's helpful to be prepared.
Yeah.
Um, so we've been offering a virtual estate planning consultations and meetings, and we've been able to handle most of the process virtually.
Mhm.
For our signings, we are meeting with our clients outside in our office parking lot,
Mhm.
so that they can sign from the comfort of their car,
Yeah.
and we can have the notary there and the two witnesses
Good.
practicing social distancing and keeping everyone safe to get these documents signed.
Okay. So I guess everybody's getting pretty creative during this strange time. So it's good to know that you could still do this.
Absolutely.
I was wondering about that because, like I said, I mean, most things can be done virtually, but I know when we went, it was a lot of signing. And like you said, there were witnesses there. And, I was wondering that, like, how do you get around that with this and COVID and things of that nature? So yeah, I guess you could still get it done. So guys, anybody watching that wants to do this could still happen during COVID. So don't be discouraged. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So the last question I want to ask you, and I always ask all my guests just because I'm a big book person. I love hearing about books, and I always am interested what books impacted my guests. So, what book would you say created the most impact in your life that you could think of?
So I have to be candid that I haven't really had the opportunity to read for leisure in a while, and I can't pick just one. But
Yeah.
I would say that I really enjoy the James Patterson Women's Murder Club
Ooh.
series.
Yep.
That they're mystery novels. They're entertaining,
Hmm.
and the series focuses on a group of women professionals:
Hmm.
a district attorney, a police officer, a reporter, and a medical examiner.
Okay.
And in I like how the women work together to
Interesting.
solve the mysteries. And personally, I think it's important for women to support each other, work together, and empower each other.
Hmm.
So I've tried to incorporate that into my professional life.
Nice.
Um, I worked for a woman judge. My firm is a woman-owned firm, and I've really had some great and amazing women bosses and colleagues, and I really enjoy collaborating with other women just
Yeah.
like you. So
Nice. I love it. Thank you. I love it. I've never read any of these series before. I'm gonna check this out and I'll link them in the comments too, because I always link the books in the comments. And I've had so many people say, "Oh my God, I got that book that so and so recommended." And it's like I've bought so many of the books that my guests have recommended. So that's yeah, that's cool. I'll put that in there. You said James Patterson, right?
yes,
Okay. So guys, if anybody wants to connect with Lauren, I'm going to pop her email up here because if anybody has any questions about anything we talked about tonight, or if you want a little guidance to see what direction you might need to go in, if anybody's local and wants to deal directly with Lauren, you could do that as well. But this is her email, and I'm going to link that in the comments as well if anybody wants to reach out. Also, the law firm she's with is McDowell Law. We could pop, actually, I have that here too. We could pop that up there. And again, if anybody's local, you could check that out. But I will put all this stuff in the comments. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. I will answer them or I'll direct them to Lauren for you guys. But this is a big topic. And I know it's not this upbeat, fun, inspirational topic, but something it's worth thinking about, and it creates peace of mind. And once you do it, you'll feel really good. And I always love promoting feeling good. And this is one of those things that we all have on the back of our minds going, oh, we got to do that. But until it's done, it's always going to kind of nag at you a little. And once it's done, you're like, ah. Oh.
yeah,
So I assure you, I did it myself. So once you do it, you feel good. So I always encourage feeling good. So Lauren, thank you for being on tonight. Thank you for all your insight and knowledge on all of these topics that we talked about.
thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I hope that this shed a little light on maybe some questions people might have had, or maybe inspired somebody to take the next step and, get their affairs in order. And, again, it's an interesting topic, but it's something that needs to be addressed. So I hope whoever was meant to see this sees this, and I hope it gets to you. So
Thank you.
guys, thank you again for being on. And this was great. This was really, really great.
Yes.
So if you guys want to connect with me more, be sure to check out my Facebook group, Breathe and Balance. You could check it out from the internet, breatheandbalance.live, or if you're on Facebook, just go to Breathe and Balance. It's an amazing community that I love so much. I spend all my time in there. I love it so much. And my other way that you can connect with me is my YouTube channel. There's lots of great free content in there, and you could check that out at jillianladano.tv. So be sure to go over there. And that's pretty much it, guys. So Thursday Talks is taking a hiatus next week. I have another engagement next Thursday, so I'm not going to be on, but we'll pick up the following weekend, the following Thursday after that. And we're at a new time. We're at 7 o'clock now, so I hope that's working for everybody. And that's it. I will see you guys in 2 Thursdays from now. Lauren, again, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much. This
You're
was great.
welcome. Thank you. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.